Welcome to the Honourable and the Hack.
Hello and welcome back to the Honourable and the Hack. I am Andrew Parsons.
And I am Alex Bill. Today's guest is somebody who has had deep experience inside party politics in Newfoundland and Labrador, but today comes with the luxury of perspective.
Eugene Manning is a former president of the PC Party of Newfoundland and Labrador, a former leadership candidate, and someone who knows how the machine works, but is not inside the machine.
And that's exactly why we wanted to talk to him. So Eugene, welcome.
Oh, thanks guys for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Before we get into, politics today or anything else we want to talk about, can you tell us a little bit about, your history, your background, and why you were interested in politics in the first place?
Yeah, grew up in St. Bride's on the Cape Shore. We're a political family. We grew up, I think my first political memory was going to a rally for Tom Rideout in '89 in Jersey Side or Freshwater. Loyola Herms or MHA for a long time, followed by my uncle Fabian Manning. So we were heavily involved in those campaigns. Have always lifelong member of the PC party, and it was part of our blood. Really, not much I could do with it to get away from it. Came up through the party. Always attended conventions, volunteered where I could. Became president of the party. Then post that, I think 2021. After that election, and there was a leadership contest, put my name forward for that, ran that leadership for a little over a year almost. And since then, still involved, not formally, I suppose, now, but on the volunteer side, help out on local campaigns and whatnot, and federally with the Conservative Party. And as for me, married, 2 kids, Max and Elliot. Elliot's 8, Max is 6, and my wife, Megan, is an economist. We live here in St. John's. I still work in St. Bride's back and forth most days, and I work around the island. I do construction, wharf construction, pretty much everything, really, a lot of remote work. So.
Excellent. Eugene, it's a pleasure to have you on board here. We were saying pre-show that I think at some point we may have been in the audience together. Might have been even watching Alex do some media stuff. So it's great to have you here. So let's do this quickly but properly. So from your vantage point, okay? No official role, not in a caucus. You don't have a party title. What is your treetop level read of Newfoundland and Labrador politics right now?
Eventually, I think everyone's in shock. I think the Liberals can't believe they lost. As a partisan, I'll say the arrogance they showed in that campaign was a bit rough. But I think they're settling into the role, trying to figure out how to be in opposition. I think right now they're not doing a great job of it. They're the PCs, I think, are in shock that they formed government. They're still trying to get their legs under them. I think they're doing well. It's going to take a bit of time. They were 10 years out of power, so it's going to take that bit of time for everyone to figure out their new roles and get ingrained. But overall, I think it's really interesting now as watching both parties try to establish those two roles. For the Liberals, I think a massive issue they have is right now they're doing the PC's job for them. They come out and they say they can't open this ER because where are they going to get the doctors? Instead of trying to set the bar high, they're lowering the bar for this new government every day. On the PC side, I think their challenge is they have to put their stamp on this early because I think there's a bit of a feeling that this could be a blip in the road. And in reality, the PCs are the governing party. They're going to be there for a while and they can't be waited out. And it seems like there's, whether it be in the civil service or in the writ large, it seems like there's this bit of thing where people still haven't come around to that realization.
I agree 100%, Eugene. Having gone through that transition before, how you adapt to the new role will dictate how long you stay in that role. And I remember back in the day, I think we had back in 2015, we kind of knew we were going to form the government, or we had a good inclination. We had an amazing amount of momentum, whereas, even as you said, there was a surprise here. And back then, it did take the PCs some time to figure out the opposition side. And you're right. You're seeing that same thing now, where going from government to opposition is a very difficult transition. Trying to take that sort of the different thought process out of your head and convert to trying to do that new role. So I tend to agree there. And sometimes sitting back watching the press releases, I'm sort of sitting back myself watching it and seeing how it unfolds.
The Liberals are fighting the last war. I mean, they're out defending the record. They're out, like I said, they're lowering the bar instead of trying to raise it, and they're trying to explain away the past government instead of trying to turn that page and acknowledge the fact that they lost. Maybe go quiet for a while the honeymoon period, extends 6 or 8 months, and wait to have something concrete to say. If you oppose everything, it quickly loses its impact, and I think you're already seeing that a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to seize on the thing you said about shock, because we haven't had a shocking election win here in I don't know how long. I mean, the Clyde Wells ran a pretty tight race his first time, but I think people still knew that was the way it was going to go. Then you're going back to the 70s before any of us were born. So we haven't we had a change in government 10 years ago. Everybody knew how it was going to go. In 2003, everybody knew how it was going to go. It's been a lifetime for some people since this has happened. And, you talked about not having much time to put your stamp on it. And it seems like that sort of shock to the system led to some kind of delay in being able to get the stamp out in the first place.
Yeah, no, look, I'm sure there was a transition in place, and as you said, I'm not privy to the inner workings on that level, but planning for it and the reality of it are two separate things, and you can't get ahead of yourself. The first thing you have to do is win the election. I'm sure they were all in. I don't know what the numbers were. Something like less than a few hundred votes was the difference between a PC majority and so. If they had spent time, prepping this huge transition project, they probably wouldn't even be in a position to be able to avail of it. I think, to your point, when it's that long, come back to Andrew, you said when you guys came in 2015, the institutional knowledge is not there in the party as to how these things function and everyone learning the role. And yeah, no, they got to put their stamp on it. I think they're doing some good things. I think the big challenge is when there's that gap of knowledge, the civil service is going to tend to try to step in to fill that void. But at the same time, as they're also going to have their own interests, and you have to be very careful to be serving your interests and your long-term goals as opposed to serving the institution and the process.
I was wondering at what point we were going to get into a podcast and have a conservative come on and talk about the deep state.
Yes, well, we can go there if you like. I'm an open book. You can ask away, but I don't think I think there's a whole conversation to be had there about the size of the civil service, both provincially and nationally, and the role they play. And it's become it's a voting block almost at this point, and it's very interesting. Also, you could say that there's a very interesting dynamic if you get into the weeds early on, where the PCs didn't pick up many seats in the metro region. This government has a very unique opportunity that a lot of the impact that they would have on most of the people who work on Confederation Hill won't impact their voting block. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the upcoming budget and as they try to find money to do things that they want to do. Anyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with government spending and where we spend it. So I'm very interested to see if they take advantage of that opportunity that is almost once in a lifetime at the moment.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely come back to that. It's like really interested on your take as someone who's been, you're politically astute. You've been following it all your life. You've got an interest in some of these things that others don't. So one thing I've said this before on the podcast and outside was that as opposed to say when I transitioned into government, we didn't have a massive time crunch on. We had the budget, which had to happen in the spring. But this government's coming in and, they're taking over the MOU conversation, the Beta Nord negotiation, even Bull Arm trying to figure out where that goes. 3 massive files, always some time constraints. So, I just look at them and say, man, I know what it was like when I was in there. I felt like I was reading all day, every day. And then these folks have the time lapse or the time constraint on them. What's your thoughts on the files? Maybe what was said pre-election, now it's being said post-election, and as someone who's a business person in this province.
Yeah, it's. I agree with you. They have a lot of things to take on, and when you start to roll through it by the ministries or the departments, and what's on the premier's plate, what's on the individual minister's plate, and how they, there's only 16 hours in a day, if you want to put it at that. So that becomes a real challenge in how you delegate those things to the relevant ministries. Now, if you give the premier's office the MOU, Beta Nord, and Bull Arm, for example, if you take those 3 files, that's a full-time job in and of itself. And there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made there. I always come back, I don't know if I already said it, but don't let great be the enemy of the good. You have these 3 massive files. They're going to be very hard pressed. I think they can make some great gains on it. The MOU now has been put into a review coming up for April. Just given the dynamics of the election in Quebec and how this thing plays out, that seems to be, this is just me speaking, but it seems to be put on the burner for a while. You can't have 3 of these things go by the wayside, meaning one of these has to come through from an economics perspective. Coming back to the business background, is if you want to bring in your social programs and the spending you want, there has to be, economic development here somewhere. And the challenge is, to me, and this comes back to economic development in Newfoundland and Labrador, is businesses investing in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's not government investing in businesses. And I think, Andrew, that's a challenge your government had. Coming back to my partisan stripe, but I think that's a challenge that Newfoundland governments have had throughout. So while you need what's in the best interest of Newfoundland and Labrador, some of these things have to get off the ground, and you've got to get moving on it, because if you leave it all, you'll run up against, whether it be the challenge with the deficit or debt or challenge, or just employment. That something will have to go, and that's when a bad decision always seems to happen here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I think they have a great opportunity. I think the fact that these 3 things, it's going to be a challenge in the short term. In the long term, it allows for a lot of economic growth there, a lot of things. And then on the national stage, whether it be defense spending or nation building projects, Newfoundland and Labrador is very uniquely positioned now to take advantage of a lot of that. And we're ripe for infrastructure, which is where the government wants to go. So look, I think there's good things ahead.
Of those 3 big projects, what one would you predict gets done or gets done first?
Well, it depends on what you mean by bull arm and projects. If you mean there's submarines, or like in that, I think bull arm becomes an issue of what happens with Beta Nord. I think Beta Nord gets done. I think that's the one that's closest, not say to the finish line, but has been in process for a long time. Those works. There's an issue obviously now, and Premier Wakeham has stated the topsides work is going to be done here. I know that's a huge issue with Equinor and how that rolls out. And once again, it comes back to don't let great be the enemy of the good. We need a good deal. I'm a deficit guy, so I think we need a strong royalty regime and we can't trade short-term gain here in the province for our long-term interests. And finding that balance is going to be very interesting, and finding something that's sellable to the public. But the benefit, Andrew, of coming in on a new government is you do have that honeymoon period, and people are going to have faith in you and are going to be cheering you on. And it's a great time to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I mean, when you come in, everybody is in your corner. Everybody wants to see good things happen. I mean, there are times when I felt like in 2020, when Premier Fury came in, one of the big challenges we had then was the question about whether we were supportive of the offshore or not. With the relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau at the time, and it was a question of were we there. I think that got answered, with the investments that we made in the offshore. But it was a big sort of existential question on were you there.
Well, it was, and then there was Bill C-69 at the time, which all came through that, and then there was NOIA change named Energy NL. And I mean, I would say it's still an open question. And then there's that question of investment in the offshore, as opposed to creating the regulatory framework where the offshore wants to invest here. I mean, but I think that's a philosophical difference between, if there is such a thing, between liberals and conservatives, is that liberals, we were government, we're here to help, and conservatives are saying, thanks, government. Now set the table where business can thrive. And there's a whole conversation to be had around that piece. And I don't think anyone. I'm not trying to say liberals are bad. I think everyone's doing what they believe is in the best interest of the province. I truly believe that. I just think things get in the way from time to time. And 2020, look, that was even on the national stage, that was a completely different political environment than what we're in today. Whether it be climate, the discussion around climate change, and like I said, oil, and the Overton window, if you want to call it in that regard, has completely changed in the past 5 years.
You've been involved in politics your whole life. Your family's involved in politics. You've had all these different roles. Right now, you don't have a formal role, but you're still just as plugged in. So you get to have the inside view without being beholden to anybody. Does that make it a little bit fun in a way?
Good question. I think if anything, it's it's fun. It's a bit challenging for me now because I ran into leadership, because I now have that somewhat of a public profile for what it's worth or for how big it is. When I do offer my opinion, people often think I have an ulterior motive now, and whether I'm towing a party line on the PC side or I'm trying to settle scores or sour grapes. When anyone who knows me knows I've always been strongly opinionated, and I like to be able to express it. That's it. I'm not hugely involved in social media and those things, and not that I'm not worried about what I say. I don't want to take the time to get into Twitter wars or respond to the comments on Facebook. I just kind of, so you'll see me pop up. I'm huge on the debt and deficit. I usually put up a post a year about the budget. I'm probably the only guy who sit down and read estimates and go through it and try to, figure things out. But beyond that, no, it's interesting. Back when I was involved more, um, I'm always pretty vocal with my opinion in my group chats with people, or when I was president of the party, I had constant communications with the leader. And if I took issue, it's not for me to express publicly, but behind closed doors, I would. And anyone who knows me, they know my phone number, and they know I'm not shy on what I think on things. So, but it's fun. I enjoy politics, as you can tell.
Two things. Number one, not many people mention estimates, which just goes to show that you've established your bona fides for sure, because it used to be my favorite part of the budget process on both sides.
I tell you what I found super interesting this year, and maybe it's a document to come, that September update that Minister Cody had to release prior to the election. It's not estimates, Andrew. I don't know if you know the name on it offhand. I'm actually, it's in the corner of my room. I can see the binder over here. But I found that even more interesting than the estimates, because it seemed like the finance department went more into the rationale of, well, really, it was a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the economy, and the value placed on each. And the rationale was there, which I thought was super interesting. Now, I mean, I don't think there's many sitting on a Saturday morning in September rolling through that. But yeah, no, I ate it up. I have it flagged. I'm looking at it over here now. I missed a few pages. I want to go back and go through.
Well, listen, you can maybe tell me how it looked, because I can tell you I didn't have eyes on the document. But again, the estimates, that's a whole nother conversation, and I don't want to bore people here now for talking about that. But going back to what you said, Eugene, again, I don't think you don't sound like someone who's ever minded saying how they felt or what your opinion is. I can already tell you do it in a respectful way. But do you find yourself, and again, I can empathize here, like where you had a formal role, you're PC party president. Now you're out of that role. Do you find there's less give a shit now? Or, are you able to let it go, or do you still sort of keep an eye?
I don't think I ever gave a shit, and that was a bit of a problem for me. It probably cost me a few votes at times, and a few things over the years. I remember when I was president, even within the party dynamics. I remember one night in particular, because I was sitting at this desk. It was a Valentine's Day, and we were rolling through a new constitution, and a pretty prominent former cabinet minister called up and he threatened me with legal action. And I said, "Go for it." I said, "I don't care. Like, it's not my. It's. I've never really cared on that side. It's I guess probably more so now that I don't that I not that I shouldn't say I don't care what people think. I do care, and I engage good debate, but I'm not shy of my opinions or fearful of giving them. I think if anyone wants to come back at you or be repercussions because you hold a particular opinion, it says more about them than about me. I know some people don't have the luxury of being in those positions, and I think within the party dynamics in Newfoundland and Labrador, there's always that worry where you're in a position of authority today, but I could be in a position of authority tomorrow, and vice versa. So everyone's always fearful of the same people you pass on the way up or the same people you pass on the way down. I respect that, but at the same time, is that I think it's also a challenge as to why things don't get done here. Is that people are always worried about the personalities as opposed to about the policy underneath.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We are going to move on. We have a little theme here. I think we'll throw it back to you at the end. And if you want to come to us with some questions, then you can ask them then. And if we hate them, we can just cut it out. So it's perfect. We shared this with Eugene in advance, so he had a little bit of notice, perhaps not as much as he would like, but three kind of broad questions about Conservative Party in Newfoundland and Labrador and also Canada. And They are what is one thing that the PCs in Newfoundland and Labrador have learned from the federal Conservatives. What's one thing that they could stand to learn from their federal cousins? And what's one thing that Mr. Polyev and the federal Tories could stand to learn from Premier Wakeham and the Conservatives here? So you can start with whichever one of those you want, and we'll throw it to you and hear what you have to say and give our feedback.
So you gave me an hour or so, and I appreciate that. I had a bit of time to think about it. As I mentioned to you, you didn't when you messaged me about doing this a couple of days ago. I didn't have my calendar on me. It didn't make the calendar. I'd forgotten about it. My wife mentioned to me that you're ready for the podcast, and I said, "Oh, that's a problem. I haven't really put thought to it." Uh, the PCs learned in this past campaign, and it's interesting to note too, by the way, in this past campaign is the Conservative Party here and the PC Party is the Conservative Party actually got 20,000 more votes here than the PC Party did in the 2025 elections. Now, that said, there was a huge turnout federally. The Liberals got 150,000 and the Provincial Liberals got 86,000, and it was 88, I think, for the PCs and 110 for the Conservatives. Just an interesting tidbit. The PC campaign here was managed by Steve Outhouse. He's national organizer, has a lot of experience, did a great job, a wonderful campaign. What he really brought, I think, to the campaign here was message discipline and data-driven results, whether that be on your GOTV, which Steve is known for and his strength is known for, but the message discipline of safer communities, better healthcare, and lower taxes. The campaign was consistent. It stuck through it. People weren't stepping out on their own. Now, there's a conversation to be had there around where local media, no offense, Alex, has somewhat dropped off here. So there's not that many opportunities for candidates to step out of line simply because they're not front and center as much as they would be. But even in the context of what it was, I think that the PCs were on message. They talked about what people wanted to talk about. And if there's such thing as learning from the federal party, I think they took it as a good example. And I think they did a very good job of executing that. What they could learn from the federal party, and look, this is a pendulum, and I think the federal party might be too much on this, and the provincial party is not enough, is clarity and purpose. Meaning, I think people are much clearer in what the Conservative Party of Canada stands for and what they want to accomplish in terms of policy goals and philosophical bent. Now, that could be the reasons provincially why they're not as strong. That could be a reflection of our politics too. And there's not much philosophical difference between the Liberals and the PCs at present. I would like to see more personally. I think it's I'm not huge on this personality-driven thing, but I think that it would help. I had a conversation today actually about how this election was very much there was a protest vote here against the Liberal Party as well, and so the PCs didn't need a strong, philosophical bent just because they were not the governing party. And if you look to Britain now, Keir Starmer ran on a very similar campaign. He got a huge majority there last year, but he ran on a similar campaign. He's ran into a lot of trouble in his government is because a lot of people saw their values reflected in that campaign, and now that he's trying to govern and be more specific, he's running into trouble. And I think that's anyway. It's just a little thing we were talking about today. I think that's something where it come. And the last one is something the Conservative Party should learn from the PCs. And I got this from somewhere, so full credit to someone who's much smarter than me. But it's you're looking for people to vote for you, not to apologize for people not voting for you in the past. And it comes back to that thing of like, in terms of voter identification and getting out to vote. You need a message that's going to persuade people to vote for you, not the message that persuaded you to believe in yourself or the people who you've already persuaded. And I think there's a purity test that comes with the Conservative Party sometimes that's a bit of a challenge. And being more open tent and moving that messaging to encapsulate a larger swath of the public. That said, they got 42%, so you can argue that much. But I think that's something to be more permissive on that side is something that the CPC can learn from the PC party as well.
Andrew, you want to take one of those first, and then I know which one I'll pick, but you can start.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about this, I think if I were to pick one, it would be what the federal Conservatives can learn from the provincial. And this is sort of my take. I don't even know if it makes sense, but I felt that in the provincial campaign, there's no one that looked at the provincial PCs and said that they were worried about the leadership, worried about Tony Wakeham. Whereas I think there was a middle of the road group federally that wasn't liking what Pierre Poilievre was selling. The man can be a bit harsh, and that's not to take away anything from him. This is not even partisan to me. I just think that there's people that are true believers, doesn't matter what you say, and then there's some that are like not going to vote for you no matter what. But there's a pretty wide swath there that might go either way, and I felt Tony was able to get to those people. I don't think Pierre quite was.
I tend to agree. I understand where you're coming from, and I tend to agree with you. And Tony's numbers, he wouldn't have that opposition number or I should say, the premier has those numbers that Mr. Poilievre doesn't. But there's a challenge there. It comes back to politics and policy as well. And the issue with relevancy, um, and this is an issue I think right now is within the Conservative Party, if you will. And there's Premier Ford, Premier Houston, Premier Wakeham. Now look, there's popular, and then there's also being relevant and consequential. And I would think that I'm sure Pierre Poilievre is not happy that he's not prime minister today. However, I would say that the Conservative Party has had such an impact on the national political landscape over the past 5 years. I mean, Mark Carney is closer to Pierre Poilievre in policy than he is to Justin Trudeau. I mean, the Liberal Party has completely shifted. The National Liberal Party has completely shifted. That's a challenge for the Conservative Party right now, because you got me, who's conservative, and if Mark Carney is looking to rationalise the public service in Ottawa and run a pipeline through BC, I mean, I'm not going to support him, but it's hard for me to get up in arms against him, in terms of what he's doing. So it depends on what your end is. If your end is to be prime minister, Pierre Poilievre is not prime minister. If your end is to push those policy objectives, and I get it, we're in politics. The goal is to win. In 20 years, people will look back and say the Conservative Party had some massive wins here in the past. In the past, they've completely shifted the conversation in the country. And I mean, Pierre Poilievre has been at the front of that. I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying from a pushing your policy agenda, the Conservative Party has been quite successful in that regard. Even they probably wouldn't agree with me on that. But just standing back as an outside observer, it's like, that's all I see.
From Eugene Manning of the federal NDP.
I was actually going to say that I agree with what you're saying too. They have been a massive part of the conversation, but I bet you at the end of the day, he just trade a little bit of that so he can be the guy signing the order papers.
Look, I don't, and it's such a challenge as a conservative dealing with a liberal, Andrew Storm, but you're liberal on the here today. So you guys just switch right over and you come over and you take it's people say it's Poilievre without the Poilievre is what Carney's selling, and I don't take issue with Carney with Prime Minister Carney on that. I find it so challenging to think that someone could be an MP in a Trudeau government, is now an MP in a Carney government, and say that they believe in the same things. I mean, they're completely different, and it's I think it's a problem for I shouldn't say it's a very big challenge for the federal Conservative Party as to how to deal with that. But I just think, in terms of, it comes back to what is the goal, and I'd agree. Pierre Poilievre says the goal is to be prime minister. He didn't accomplish it, but when you look at it from a different angle, I mean, he's done some heavy lifting on the national agenda over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And coming back to the NDP, look, as you know, I'm a huge Wab Kinew fan. I think Wab Kinew is one of the most strongest politicians we have in this country at the moment. So,
well done.
The one I will pick was your second answer about what the provincial Conservatives could learn from the Conservative Party of Canada, because some of what you're talking about, it almost is like swimming against this cultural tide that's existed here for decades, both in the fact that the two parties provincially, in my opinion, and you guys have existed in either of those parties, so maybe you'll disagree, have never been all that far apart ideologically, and in fact have kind of crossed over from left to right from time to time. And that speaks to why maybe it's so personality driven, because there's less of that ideological base to work with. So I think it's an interesting point, but you're talking about overturning decades of history and culture, and maybe they should, but it seems like a tall order in this province where the electorate is very much asking, what can you do for me? And it's hard to not throw, every idea and spending promise back at them.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily mean it has to be a concern. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the PCs, but I'm not trying to say it has to be a fiscal conservative idea or any idea for that matter. I just think that uh, when you offer a clear objective as to what you want to accomplish over a period of time, it also helps uh, not only your dealings with the electorate, with your government and with your ministers within. It helps to focus everyone. Now, there was the blue book, and there's all those things there, and you know, as an observer, I can speak to a few of them, but just like anyone, that they're to me, they're nibbling at the edges of the structural change that we have to do. I think it comes back to within, whether it be within the internal party structure or the provincial structure, is that no one here wants to upset the apple cart too much because you're in power today, but you won't be tomorrow. And we're such a small population that you're going to have to be relying on that person. I went to the PC fundraiser 2 weeks ago, and you're seeing diehard liberals there clap when Premier Wakeham announces that we've retired the debt, and it's like they're gritting their teeth, but it's like it's so transparent here how it's like when it's your turn at the trough. And I take massive. I don't. That's not a knock on my party. I think it's just a knock on the political system we have here. I take huge issue with it. I take issue with as a taxpayer. That's where I come from, all this stuff. But it's just I don't think anyone wants to take on the heavy lifting here in that regard for that reason. Is that they are so afraid that they know it won't always be their turn, and therefore it's no one can push too hard because you're going to create that rift that you won't be able to close later. And it comes back to the oversized influence that our provincial government has on the economy here, whether that be regulation or in support. And then, if you're someone like me who doesn't want to seek out government support for things, but your competitors are, now you're competing against your own tax dollars for work. So you have to operate in that system, in that ecosystem. And it's a huge challenge, huge.
Eugene, the one that I thought about was what the PCs learned from the Conservative Party of Canada. And I thought their social media game really changed, both in their aggressiveness there's a risk of rubbing some people the wrong way. I know it got under the Liberal skin. And the frequency, and then the advertising, which is a story we covered at all Newfoundland and Labrador. They outspent the Liberals on social media, Facebook in particular, during the campaign by something like a 9-to-1 ratio. It depends on some other candidate campaigns, but it was a huge difference when they were the less funded campaign overall. They have a social media manager, Lena Bouma, who is from Ontario, comes from that federal, an Ontario conservative background, and I think perhaps carries a little bit of that aggressiveness too. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was a change of pace, and perhaps a change of pace from kind of the personality that Premier Wakeham brings to the table too. And I wonder if that kind of shook things up a little bit and made an impact.
Well, it comes back to the gap in local media as well. I mean, that I was tracking throughout the campaign because, once again, I'm not the coolest guy in the world, so I do check the Facebook ad spends, 2 or 3 times a week to see where they're going. And I'd highlighted it to a few people. I said, where are the Liberals spending their money? Like, it doesn't, and I and I don't even have cable here at the house, so I don't watch into like I don't watch the evening news. I'll if I know something's going to be on, I'll catch it. But I mean, Facebook is the only way you're going to access me with an ad, and I think they did a very good job of that. Yeah, the tone has changed a bit, but the results speak for themselves in that regard as well. Is it sometimes is it not? You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, when we're all standing back and looking at it, there might be things to you stop, you pause for a second. But that said, I don't think that the Liberal campaign was over there not doing this stuff just because they thought it wasn't in good taste. I just don't think they thought of it. I just think there was a real challenge on that. And I had that conversation. Say some of the actions of the Liberal Party during the campaign, it seems like they were taking it so for granted that they continued that campaign as if they were in government. Even oh, you have to help me with the name. Is it Michael Winslow he's on the new panel?
Wilson.
Wilson. Sorry, Winslow. Family Matters. But Wilson, yeah, like his letter that was redacted, like after Premier Wakeham released that, I didn't. To this day, I can't understand why the Liberals didn't release that during the campaign. I mean, the impact that
Yes.
the redacted letter had towering over the campaign versus the substance of it when you got to read it. Now, I know Wilson had, he had separate commentary, but as it relates to the letter, it was a letter about process. It wasn't a letter about the intricacies of the MOU. But because it was redacted, even I was like, geez, that must be a smoking gun. And it just seemed like they were just taking the whole thing for granted. They didn't even pause to think, no, we're in a campaign now. We have to run this like a campaign. They were just treating themselves like a government, try and redact and withhold what we can to move the policy agenda forward.
I got to jump in here because number one, I guess it's to prove sometimes what people don't realize actually happens is that we do live in a country and a province where liberals and conservatives and NDP actually agree with each other quite a bit. And, you can disagree on a number of things, but I think I agree with just about every friggin' thing you just said, Eugene. And I'll start off, I guess, from the point that, look, I wasn't involved with the campaign. I mean, I had a vested interest in seeing my successor in Virgil Lapoil win. I wanted him to win. He's a friend. His constituency system was mine. I mean, obviously, I wanted Michael to win, but I wasn't, facing eyes into it. I'd help out with some friends, no different than a lot of other former cabinet ministers. That's part of what you do. But number one, I mean, Steve Outhouse, and there's more that I'm not aware of. I've never even met Steve. I mean, kudos. I mean, there was a difference in 2025 PCs versus 2024 PCs. There it is. I mean, and I'm the same thing. I don't know what the spends were, but you noticed it online, right? I'm not a big news watcher anymore. Wasn't during the last part going off, but it worked. It absolutely worked. It got to people. People saw it. And I think the big thing, to go to what you were just saying, I think there are times when you're campaigning as government, you're afraid of you almost know the background. Whereas when you're in opposition, you don't care. And I say that as someone who's been on both sides. But you can't allow the other side to say all the right things and then you be worried about the repercussions if you stay in. I mean, in this case, they never got back in. And I read that. I never saw that Wilson letter till after the campaign. And I remember saying, well, why was it redacted? It was probably a civil servant said to redact it. When I read it, I was like, why the hell did you leave this here? You nailed it. It was the shadow lurking over the campaign. And when you actually looked at it, it was nothing. There was nothing there. And so I'm completely with you. It had an oversized effect. And it was a strategic error. There it is.
Yeah, no, I think there was hindsight is 2020, right? I think there was a few, and you hear things, same thing, Andrew. You hear things from the campaign and people from it and how they went about it, and it just it's too late the day after. And full credit to Outhouse and the entire team the Premier Wakem put together. I mean, they were a disciplined campaign and they won. And coming back is the only thing I don't like when I hear people talk about this is people say the Liberals lost. Yes, they did. The PCs won. The PCs are the governing party. They are going to be the governing party for definitely the next 4 years, possibly the next 8 years, and they have a very good shot at it. And it's that you don't get to explain it away. It is what happened, right? And so they need full credit for that too.
So before I invited Eugene on here, or around the time I did, he asked if he could ask us questions too. And we're not sure if he has something specific, but we're about to find out.
I have two actually, and they're for Andrew in particular. But I have two questions. One is a policy question and a philosophy question, but it relates to a particular policy in your district, Andrew, at the time. And the other one is just about the system, and we already spoke a bit to it earlier. So I don't know if you want to pick which one you want. The harder one is the district one.
Well, take off, man. Let's go. Let's start tough.
Okay, Hurricane Fiona. This is not a gotcha. This is just me just trying. I always find when I have
He says with
conversations,
the biggest grin on his face in the world.
no, even within my own party, because I like to understand where people are coming from. Hurricane Fiona relief, right? And now we have the wildfire relief Exception Bay North. And I know you guys did a lot of work for the people of Port Bass, and I was over there. But was there any conversation within, I don't want to say within cabinet, but within yourself, about when people didn't have access to insurance or didn't have insurance, by government stepping in and bailing them out, to make them whole, creating a moral hazard that, it creates that question of why carry insurance. And I guess the follow-up to that be, what should the current government do with the disaster relief in Conception Bay North? And should they use that as, I know there's some particular differences between Hurricane Fiona relief and the wildfire relief, in particular about they didn't allow for flooding coverage, but it's a question I wonder in my own mind. I don't know the answer to it. I was just curious to get your opinion.
Yeah, no. I'll preface it by saying, and this is for the people out there that are, constantly waiting to bust you. I'm not going to disclose anything from cabinet, and just to put that out there so people don't get the.
I didn't mean it
I
that
know,
way. Yeah, you know what
I know you're not going there, but there's some numbnuts out there that's going to just say, "Oh yeah, he's disclosing secrets." What I would say, I actually said this we had a meeting, like a town hall in the St. James Regional High Gym, and this is when the point about not having insurance coverage was coming up. At that point, my takeaway was that, why don't we have people subrogate the rights to us so that we could go after the insurer and have a better opportunity as a government to do so. It was impossible to not be able to contribute to help. But I get your point exactly. At some point, it creates the need for, well, we're not going to need insurance. Government's going to bail us out whenever there's an issue. The other thing I would suggest is, I don't know, and I, again, wasn't involved in the fire situation this summer, had close proximity to it like a lot of people, scared the hell out of me like a lot of people. It was terrible to watch. But I think this government is close enough to it that I don't know if there was ever a postmortem done on Fiona in terms of looking at the government response, government actions, plans, and everything else. We're going to see these again. We might see them more frequently, in any kind of season. I think this government, being brand new, it gives them an opportunity to come in and say, how is this handled? And what do we need to do, from a response point of view? I don't know if it was done last time. There are things that I thought that were, could have been done differently. And again, we're seeing our share of it all the time. So I'd say hopefully that answers it. I mean, I've look, as a lawyer, it's hard to look at and realize and think that some of these insurance companies might be getting away from the duty that they hold, the coverage that they're supposed to provide. But at the same time, as a government, it's very hard to walk away and say, well, that's the insurer's job. But it's a difficult policy choice.
And that's what I just, like I said, I'm just genuinely curious as to how as to how it comes about, and even if that conversation took place. So thank you for that. The other question I have was, I am of the belief that the House of Assembly, in some respects, because there's 40 members, 500,000 people, so 10, 12,000, our districts are so small that the House of Assembly is in a situation of weaponized incompetence. And what I mean by that is, the system here is so broken. I just want to get your opinion as a former MHA. Sorry, Alex, no questions for Newfoundland today. When you have an issue with government, right, and the system is broken, whether it be healthcare or whatever, you call up your MHA and you call up Andrew Parsons, and he gets it fixed for you. You come out of that interaction saying, "Boy, that Andrew Parsons, he's some MHA." You don't come out of that interaction saying, "Andrew Parsons had 10 years to fix this and did nothing to solve the system," so that there's the incentive is there for our MHAs, who theoretically are legislators at their core, to leave the system broken so they can fix it. 'Cause, when you get up to other provinces or MPs, when you're dealing with 70, 80,000 people, that personal interaction doesn't carry forward to swing an election. But now you get people say, "Oh, he's a great MHA, or she's a great MHA. She got me my appointment." I'm, as a fellow who's always on the road, I don't have time to call and complain. So, like, if I'm just waiting in the queue like everyone else. So I don't know. I frame it as weaponized incompetence. I just think that, and I think within the House of Assembly, you guys almost exist like a party unto yourselves, where none of you guys push too hard on each other. It's because the collegiality of it, provincially, I think, has gotten to a point where it's almost like you look out for each other to a level that you don't point out the flaws as much as you would get elsewhere. I just curious what your opinion is on that.
So on the first one, absolutely. I mean, we live in a province where even people within these different systems, whether it's physicians, other healthcare professionals, or go outside of healthcare, they're the ones actually telling patients to call their MHA. Like, that's what's going on here. That's the system we live in. The other thing that I find interesting and never bothered me, but if if I had $1 for every person that said, I'm going to go call open line now and complain about the issue, and I'd say, well, did you call this person, that person, whatever person first? No, I'm not going to do that. I saw a lot of that, and that just goes back to, again, I think your bigger point, which is a broken system that is not incentivized to be fixed. Going back to the House of Assembly, you said 40 members. There's not enough. There's not enough members. That move to bring it from 48 to 40, I think, has backfired in a number of ways, including the ones that ask for committees and research and everything to be done. Pretty hard when you got only 40 members there. The one thing I disagree with you on, I don't think it's any more collegial now than what it was. I've noticed a difference. Maybe it was just me, where I don't know. Maybe things have changed, but between social media, like I guess I was sort of there in that gap where when I started, yeah, Facebook was there, but it's not to the point like it is now. Twitter. I remember getting my Twitter account during the campaign in 2011. Um, I just saw even back then we used to have all these debates. You don't see any of that now, so I don't know if there's more of a collegiality to it. That maybe there's a fear that if you disappoint or piss off a cabinet minister, that well, say goodbye to trying to get this issue solved. All I can say is I didn't act like that. I mean, I had some pretty good rackets with some of the
Sure.
people on the other side, and the fact is that I think you establish a reputation that we're gonna have it out here, but when the camera's not on, we're still gonna try to work things out because it's the right thing to do for a citizen or an issue or this or it's the right policy decision.
So we've hit
Fair
the
enough.
point in the podcast where we're talking about subrogation and MHA to district size ratios. So it's probably the right time to say goodbye to the 30 people still listening and our fantastic guest, Eugene Manning. Eugene, this has been great. All just a little background. I got to know you a little bit before the leadership campaign and then after. And come to learn that you are a true politics junkie and a news junkie. And, you talk about looking through estimates. You're the only person I think I've ever met who also looks at the province's bond database to see which bonds are selling at discounts or premiums. So you've got that nerd in
Daily,
you too.
actually.
And I'm very grateful that you came here to share it with us.
Listen, thanks so much for having me. And the NL bond database is actually quite interesting. People should be tracking it more. We're on the wrong path, people. We got to someone got to straighten it up. We can't keep the can very much further. Anyway, story for another day. Thank you both,
Uh,
and nice meeting you, Andrew. Probably we'll have a pint someday and swap some stories.
Absolutely, brother. Listen, thanks for coming on, and I'm pretty sure we haven't seen the last of Eugene Manning in some fashion between business and politics. Looking forward to seeing what you continue to do, and all the best, brother.
I appreciate it. Same to you.
Yeah, it was great to have Eugene on. It's somebody I've gotten to know over the years, like I have you. And I think it's telling and hopefully something that the audience gets to see as we continue to do these about how much common ground and, respectful argument and even laughs people who are on different sides of the political divide can have. Something I hope we keep bringing to this for months and months to come.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know Eugene super well. It's funny, actually. Know his sister. We did the bar course together. And then, obviously we did some politics together when she was in her ministerial position. His uncle Fabian actually is one of the better politicians I've ever met, who was just really decent and, always a good person to talk to. I don't know if I ever ran into him where he didn't ask how, I was doing or my father was doing. And I think, look, I think we're going to see Eugene around. I mean, got young kids, has an interest, extremely intelligent. I think he's got a lot to give. I can remember seeing when he was going to run for the leadership, and made me nervous because I was like, "That's a guy to be reckoned with."
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the fact that both you and he kind of come from political lineage. You carry that it's a benefit, but you carry a bit of burden as well. And you just part of life navigating how you kind of forge your own identity when you kind of carry a collective family identity too. And perhaps I'll have him back on again someday to talk more about that.
Well, I can guarantee I wasn't going to conventions when I was 4 and 5 years old, like Eugene was, and later to the game for me. But he was a fascinating guest. Hope we get him back, and folks, hope you enjoyed. We're enjoying bringing these people to you. Hopefully you're able to tune in, whether it's on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. I'm still getting used to saying that. Jesus, I see enough of my kids' videos to like and subscribe. But drop us a line at Gmail. Look, we're interested to hear what you had to say, and even if it's shitty, I don't care. Like, let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, we'll take some of that and incorporate it into future shows. Sometimes we'll have shows where Andrew and I lead off the top on topical issues. We might have some more thematic stuff like we did tonight with Eugene. We're going to listen to what people have to say and try and learn from it.
Mailbag show. That's what we're going to do. The mailbag show. And if we get enough questions sent in, bring it on.
100%, or live chat even. So looking forward to all of that and doing more interviews like this. And until then, Andrew, it's been a pleasure as always.
Cheers, brother. All the best, everyone. All the best to UAB. Looking forward to the next one. Tune in. Take care.